In 1922, a little farm in the woods of Bavaria became the site of what would become Germany's most famous unsolved murder, when 6 people were brutally killed with a pickaxe. What led up to it and followed is nothing short of bizarre. Although more than 100 suspects were interviewed, as recently as 1986, an official suspect has never been named in the Hinterkaifeck murders. A few days prior to the crime, farmer Andreas Gruber told neighbours about discovering footprints in the snow leading from the edge of the forest to the farm, but none leading back. He also spoke about hearing footsteps in the attic and finding an unfamiliar newspaper on the farm. Furthermore, the house keys went missing several days before the murders. None of this was reported to the police prior to the attack. Gruber never reported the footsteps to the police, as a small German farm located about 43 miles north of Munich was a relatively quiet and safe place. If he had, the Grubers might have avoided the gruesome and mysterious crime that befell them. On March the 31st, an unknown person, potentially persons, lured each of the 6 members of the Gruber family to their deaths. Andreas, 63, his wife Cecilia, 72, their adult widowed daughter Victoria Gabriel, 35, and Victoria's daughter Cecilia, 7. It is believed that they were all lured into the barn, one by one, where they were killed. The family maid Maria Baumgartner, 44, and Victoria's son, 2-year-old Joseph, were murdered in the home in their bedchambers. 6 months earlier, the previous maid had left the farm, claiming that it was haunted. The new maid, Maria, arrived on the farm on the day of the attack and was killed hours later. Almost a week later, on April the 4th, neighbours, along with several townspeople, stopped by to check on the Hinterkaifeck farm. Young Cecilia had not turned up for school for 2 days in a row, and the mailman had noticed the mail beginning to pile up in the postbox. They immediately contacted the police, who began an investigation into finding the murderer. However, they were unsuccessful. Through the years, Munich police interviewed more than 100 suspects, as recently as 1986 to no avail. To this day, the murders remain unsolved. Evidence showed that the young Cecilia had been alive for several hours after the assault. She was missing clumps of her own hair, which investigators believed she had torn her hair out in tufts while laying in straw next to the bodies of her grandparents and her mother. Although they never found a culprit, the police interviews and investigations, they were able to come up with clues and other answers. The police first suspected the motive to be a robbery, and they interrogated travelling craftsmen, vagrants, and several inhabitants from the surrounding villages. This theory was abandoned and a large amount of money was found in the house. It is believed that the perpetrator or perpetrators remained at the farm for several days. Someone had fed the cattle and eaten food in the kitchen, and the neighbours saw smoke from the chimney during the weekend, and would have easily found the money if robbery had been the intention. The death of Karl Gabriel, Victoria's husband, who had been reportedly killed in the French trenches in World War I, was called into question. His body had never been found. However, most of his fellow soldiers reported seeing him die, and the police believed their reports. 2-year-old Joseph was rumoured to be the son of Victoria and her father Andreas, who had an incestuous relationship that was documented in court and known in the village. A neighbouring farmer named Lorenzo Schlittenbauer publicly claimed to be Joseph's father and paid alimony to Victoria and Andreas. Shortly before the murders, Victoria was prepared to sue Schlittenbauer, who by then had a wife and a baby, for alimony. Schlittenbauer was part of the original search party that found the corpses, and he disturbed the bodies before the police arrived. The police questioned Schlittenbauer extensively, but were unable to find concrete evidence linking him to the crime. Police later decided that the voices, the newspaper, and the footprints could only mean that the murderer had actually been living in the home of the Grubers for more than 6 months before killing them. Suspects were interviewed in the town, such as a man who claimed to be the father of widowed Victoria's son, Joseph, though everyone was ultimately cleared. In 2007, the students of the police academy in Fürstenfeldbruck examined the case using modern criminal investigation techniques. They concluded that it is impossible to definitely solve the crime after so much time has passed. The primitive investigation techniques available at the time of the murders yielded little evidence, and in the decades since the murders, evidence has been lost and suspects have died. Despite these setbacks, The students did establish a prime suspect, but did not name the suspect out of respect for still living relatives. The bodies of the Hinterkaifeck murders were eventually buried, headless, in Weidhofen, where there is a memorial in the graveyard. The skulls were never returned from Munich after having been lost during the chaos of World War II. The farmstead was ultimately destroyed and demolished a year after the attacks in 1923, after all evidence could be taken from it. Close to where the farm was located, there is now a shrine. Though theories still float around about who the murderer actually was, any investigations done recently have been kept a secret and out of respect for the still living descendants. As far as the public is concerned, the Hinterkaifeck murders remains unsolved.